Okay, so I'm Yatin Trivedi. I'm Director of Standards at Synopsys, and for most practical purposes, I spend my time on Accelera and IEEE standards activities. And my partner here is John Ellis, CEO and President of SI2. And two of us and several others, including Stan, Dennis, Shishpal, we all organized low power workshop or system level low power workshop at DAC. And in this session, what we wanted to do is capture what happened at that workshop a little bit as a framework for the talks that you will hear and the updates on some of the standards activities in this area. So that's what we have, as a starting point. Okay, so one of our motivations was many people in the industry appeared to be thinking that there is still a war going on about low power formats, low power flows, and so on, and something that all of us who were in coordinating different aspects of low power activities, we felt that that's the simplest problem that we can very easily and very publicly address, and that was at least a significant consideration in putting together the system level low power workshop at DAC. And we think, and obviously, we would certainly like to hear your opinion, but we think that there was a very clear message, and the clear message was that there is uncontentious cooperation among the standards entities. And in fact, you see the three logos right at the bottom, the IEEE Design Automation Standards Committee, Accelera, and SI2, at least those three organizations working together to bring all of the low power standards activities, collaborate, align, and be consistent. Okay, and so from that standpoint, if we were to make one bold statement, there are no format wars.
Well, and as part of that, we just didn't want to give what we call lip service to it. So there were real things happening behind the scenes. Some weren't so visible. Donation of CPF that SI2 had as a standard into IEEE, and the DAC coordinating meetings that were going on behind the scenes. And so we felt a workshop would be a good way to visibly show that we are coordinating, and also a good opportunity to have some good discussion on what needs to happen next, get past the format issues, move into system level design, power modeling issues.
Okay, so our basic agenda was really in three parts. First session, and perhaps the most important aspect of that, was getting the user perspective. From user's perspective, what was it that we all need to achieve from a standards perspective? So that's why you think in terms of let's start with the end in mind. If the users want something, and if that's what we provide as a standard, well, then it's useful. If that's not aligned, in that case, it doesn't matter how great an effort you put together. If users aren't going to use it, there's no value. Okay. Session 2 was, where are we, right, in terms of current standards, current effort of putting together the new standards. And many of you know, we are talking about at least 3 or 4 different activities. There is the 1801 UPF standard, there is the 2415 Unified Hardware Abstraction, and 2416 the system level power modeling meta standard, and of course under SI2 there is the low power coalition. And so given all of that, where are we? Because they are all at different stages of maturity, different stages of contributions, and collating those contributions into one format, and so on. And then finally, given that there is a user perspective, there is the standards activity update, where are the gaps? What do people in general think we ought to go? Right? So where are the gaps, where are the overlaps, where should we go with that? And so with that, we actually put together a we think, a pretty powerful lineup for session one. Microsoft, Xilinx. Many of you know Barry Pengerly, most recently worked at NVIDIA, and of course Tom Kwan, who's right here. And they all provided user perspective on what is required, both from a design flow standpoint for system level low power, and also from standards perspective. And then we went into, and we'll go into some of these discussions very shortly. We talked about various efforts that are ongoing in the standards committees, right? So we went through that, and we're going to get more update on that today. We have, of course, Stan will talk, Sushma is here, Voin is here, Jerry is going to talk. So we'll get an update on that. And then John Redmond from Broadcom conducted the town hall style kind of open but moderated discussion. And in fact, that's what brought up a few topics which now the standards community should really be addressing. So, do you want to take this slide?
Oh, that's fine. Okay. So the key messages, and there are a lot of slides, right? And what we really wanted to get from the end users was, how are things going? Where are we going? Are we really going to develop the standards that are required to meet the needs and requirements a year from now, 2 years from now, and further? And so standardization of system power models, they can significantly help. And multiple levels of abstraction and use these models are needed. So that was a common theme that we saw. It's critical to create power models that can accommodate both groups and can operate at different abstraction levels. And ecosystem partners, the collaborations are essential. And some of these, they appear to be kind of no-brainers, but some of the interesting things that came out during the presentations are where Microsoft, where's Xilinx, see things going, what their needs are. So this summary it really is a very high-level summary. The slides are available at systempower.org, and that would be a good thing to look over to really see what type of messages long-term are added. There's some things that absolutely won't be met by standards. Standards is the enabler. There are some products and services that need to be developed by EDA companies, which is definitely one of the side benefits of attending a workshop like this, is that as vendors, you get to see where the users expect you to go.
Okay, so also in terms of current status, Stan will talk more about this, but the Low Power Coordinating Committee has really tried to bring all the different working groups to be consistent in terms of what their scope is and how they align with the scope of the other groups, right? And we'll invite Stan in just a minute, and of course that's really where it comes down to. Once you align these standards, how do you validate the concept by potentially making use of prototypes and proof of concepts? And these are some of the topics that have been going on under SI2's LPC. Let's make use of it and validate these concepts and demonstrate that these standards are in fact, or the models created based on these standards are in fact usable. And so this is the diagram that Stan would be explaining further of how the alignments are made among the three groups. And the gaps that were identified during John Redmond's open session was primarily looking at the issues or the concerns that really bring out what prevents or what barriers exist for adoption of the standards. And of course the last three sub-bullets clearly indicate, because these are the statements that came straight from the participant's mouth, right? Half of the tools don't support UPF. Well, that's a problem. You're talking about building a low power flow, and if the standard is not supported by half the tools, well then you are forced to play with only the other half, right? There is inconsistent implementation. So one tool supports one subset, the other tool supports another subset. Even though both might claim 90% each, the overlap may be only as good as 80 or 81% if you do the math, right? The simple request was just fix it, just make it work, right? As a user, I commit to use the standard. Can your tool make sure that my use of standard is supported in your tools? Just fix it, right? It was very simple, plain request.
Yeah, that was a good one. In fact, one of the users that's in the audience here is who said it. And so, but ultimately that ends up being an issue between the customer and the supplier. So we realize it takes the market some time to adopt, but we just have to make sure that the standards are interpretable and implementable. And to that extent, that'll be part of what we continue to talk about, but then it's up to the industry to adopt things.
Okay, so that's a recap of the DAC workshop. And as John said, the slides are available at systempower.org. Feel free to download them. If any of you have difficulty, you can reach either of us, and we would be happy to make sure that it's accessible. Okay? Thank you. Okay.
Any questions for Yatin or John?